The storm warning in Carolina has been canceled. Tuukka Rask has left the bubble, but the Montreal Canadiens refuse to do likewise. It's Thursday afternoon, and it's time for the HockeyDebates.com podcast. Welcome, everyone. I'm Bob Duff, as always, joined by my esteemed co-host, Kevin Allen, the Hall of Fame writer of hockey and all things sports, and playing hurt today, but we'll let Kevin tell you that story. And as always, Sascha Paruk, the lead oddsmaker from sportsbettingdime.com, joins us to talk all about hockey betting. And if hockey betting is something you like to talk about, or more importantly, like to do, we're going to give you the place to do it. The Hockey Debates podcast is brought to you by sportsbettingdime.com, your leading source for odds, sports news, and game predictions. If you're looking to see who's the favorite to win the Stanley Cup, the Hart Trophy, or who's going to win a specific series, check out all the info at sportsbettingdime.com. We'll be talking about some of their Stanley Cup odds today, and we'll also leave you a link in the description of this episode for you to check them out yourselves. So, Sascha, we mentioned the Montreal Canadiens in the intro. Are they ever going to go away, or should we believe in this team?
I think you should believe in them as much as you believe in anything else in these NHL playoffs. They're proving to be pretty wildly unpredictable, and I think that's just par for the course for the NHL playoffs. Is there's so much parity between the top 16 teams in the league that you're going to get what look like improbable outcomes, but realistically heading into the playoffs weren't that improbable to start with.
Well, they'll take the ice for Game 6 tomorrow, the Flyers and the Canadiens, Kevin. And is that the last life for Montreal? Is Philly going to snuff them out, or should we be thinking about a Game 7?
Well, I mean, the Flyers should win that game, but I agree with Sascha. It really has been unpredictable, and Carey Price is obviously an X factor. And, you know, everybody was worried about him going into the postseason. He was almost the symbol of league parity. Everybody thought, you know, the top players in the league could have an impact, and especially in that qualification round, and that turned out to be the case. Now all of a sudden we're not in the qualification round anymore, and you know he's still becoming and having an impact in the series. And you know I had said in the first round that it wasn't just Carey Price, that you know the Canadiens themselves have stepped up, and I think that's still the case. Like every game. They have had several players, you know, play at a much higher level than maybe we expected from them. So I don't know. I feel like they could push it to a Game 7. I think the Flyers are going to win this series, but I wouldn't be totally stunned if Montreal made it go 7.
Are you with Sascha, Kevin? Would you take the minus 400 odds on the Flyers to win the series right now, or would you roll the dice with that plus 305 on the Canadiens?
Well, I would be tempted to take the Canadiens just because of the nice, payoff there. Just because this is the NHL, and you know it's not like we've never seen this before in postseason play. I mean, of all the sports, hockey, in my opinion, has always been the most unpredictable. I mean, we've had many instances of lower seeds winning, big playoff series. So. I'd be tempted by the payoff just because, you know, we've seen so many unique things during this postseason.
Yeah, I'll add in there. You can actually get them as long as plus 360. I think that's at FanDuel, and basically that gives them just slightly slightly over 20% implied probability, which basically means that oddsmakers are saying the Flyers are sort of considerably better than 50% favorites to win each of the next 2 games. And if you think that the next 2 games are basically anything other than a coin flip, I would probably disagree with you, because even though the Canadiens' skill level, high-end talent isn't there to match the Flyers, you're never going to outwork them. And the NHL playoffs are basically at this point in time about bounces and about how well your goalie plays. And if you're like Montreal and you're going to generate as many shots on goal as they do, and you have a goalie like Carey Price who can put together 2 pretty good games, and you have a goalie like Carter Hart on the other end of the ice who could put together 2 back-to-back shutouts or could let in 4 pretty soft goals. I see the next two games as basically coin flips. So if you can get Montreal plus 360 to win this series, I think that's pretty good value. I'm not saying that I think they're going to, but I think that underestimates their chances.
The Canadiens, to me, are kind of like that uninvited guests at the party. You know, no one told them about the party, but they showed up anyway, even though they probably shouldn't be there. And they showed up early, and now here it is getting later in the party, and people are going home, and they just refuse to leave. Like, we've got some breaking news, too, with this series today, because Matt Niskanen, late in the third period of the last game, cross-checked Brendan Gallagher in the mouth. It went undetected by game officials, but Niskanen has since been summoned to the NHL for a hearing. And generally, traditionally, you get summoned for a hearing, Kevin, that means you're going to get a suspension.
That is for sure. And I'm not so sure it isn't warranted. If you watch that play, and if he is suspended, this is a difficult loss because I thought if you look at Niskanen, I thought it had a very negative impact on the Capitals when he left that team. He's one of those guys that plays pretty well defensively, is a pretty gifted offensive player, does everything pretty well. And, when the Capitals lost that and negatively impact their team, and I think it's really been a big help, for the Flyers. Like, I think it was just what they needed. A guy who had been experienced and been around, played big playoff games, knew what was going to have him on their defense. And I think he's a very valuable player. So if they do lose him, that's a big loss, and that could impact the next game significantly.
Yeah, you're talking about taking a guy out of the lineup who was averaging over 20 minutes of ice time per night. I think he's second on their team. It's just behind Provorov.
And on the flip side, there's also speculation that Gallagher, who suffered a apparent jaw injury, we've got actually injury news, which usually doesn't leak out. I guess they want to make sure Niskanen gets suspended, so they're pitting the tale of woe on how badly Gallagher's injured. The Canadiens are claiming he is an unlikely starter tonight. Now, that could again be just politics wanting to make sure. Maybe they're trying to lobby to get Niskanen suspended for 2 games. So if there is a game 7, they won't have him for that one either. But anyway, who's the bigger loss of those two, Sasha? Is Niskanen out of Philly's lineup hurt Montreal, or hurt them more than Gallagher's absence would hurt Montreal?
I think it does, because Montreal is so sort of by committee. I think it's much easier to sort of plug and play with their style of play and with their lineup. I don't think that taking one piece out of the sort of top 9 Montreal forwards is no matter which one you pick, is going to have as big an impact as taking away basically a top 2 defenseman from Philadelphia.
Well, we've got 2 games on tap later tonight in which series could both end. The Calgary Flames look like, their dream might be over. You just don't see – I don't know. The Flames just don't – I would say Dallas has been the better team for 4 straight games in that series, even though they didn't win all 4. They probably should have won the 2-0 loss, but Cam Talbot stood on his head in the Flames net. Now we're seeing a very similar pattern with the Flames, Kevin. The big line of Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, and Elias Lindholm is just doing absolutely nothing at 5-on-5. And if the Flames do go out tonight, might we see some upheaval in the Flames personnel?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Jeff Ward was on the hot seat coming in, and there's such a strange team. Like, rarely do I pick a playoff series based on what I think of the better team, but that's what happened. I didn't take Dallas because I loved Dallas. I took Dallas because I just like the way that the Calgary Flames play. There's just so much inconsistency. I have such mistrust on their ability to put a string of 3 or 4 games together. And I know they have done that, but they're just so up and down, and they're so unpredictable. And I think they hoped Jeff Ward was going to sort of bring it together and develop a consistency, because that's the key. And it hasn't happened. So, there's a guy sitting out there, Gerard Gallant, that I think would just be the perfect fit for this team. And I think if they lose this series, there will be changes. And I think that, there could be significant trades as well. There's been a lot of rumblings around that, maybe it's the time to move Johnny Gaudreau, that they could get a lot for him. Maybe he wouldn't be all that disappointed to go elsewhere and get a fresh start. So I could see some significant changes with this team.
Is this one over, Sasha? Has Dallas kind of just put the stranglehold and stuff of life out of Calgary?
Calgary is certainly one team that I would not want to be betting on right now. I'm with Kevin. And as I was saying before the podcast, I think they just look exhausted. And I think that is probably a product of playing a very hard best-of-5 series with Winnipeg, a team that, like Montreal, was playing very hard. And even though Calgary emerged from that, I think that they came into this official first round as a much more fatigued team than Dallas, which really just coasted through the round robin. It really didn't look like they cared all that much. I think they have a more energy reserves built up. And as you said, they've been outplaying Calgary for 4 straight games. I'm not going to say Calgary has no shot because this is the NHL playoffs, and in sort of a best of 2, a lot of crazy things can happen. But no, I want no part of Calgary.
And the great mystery of the NHL and playoff injuries, Jeff Ward hinting earlier today that Matthew Tkachuk might be an option to play. He hasn't played since he was hurt in Game 2. Suspected to have a concussion after he had a collision with Jamie Oleksiak and Jamie Benn and went off the ice very wobbly on his feet. Is Jeff Ward just playing games with the Stars, or do you think there's a real chance we could see Tkachuk in Game 6, Kevin?
It's so hard to read this just because, under the best of times, it's difficult to know what's happening with injuries. But during COVID-19 bubble play, it's almost impossible because not much is getting out. That, as you mentioned, the fact that Gallagher came out leads us to believe that they wanted that to come out, as opposed to someone doing good reporting work, because inside there we just don't know what's going on. So I think it's impossible to tell. But what we do know is they are a much better team with Tkachuk in the lineup. Like, he's as important as anyone on that team because of the way he plays, and the brand of hockey he plays is the way you need to play in the postseason. And when he's going strong, I think it helps them sort of get through that inconsistency. And unfortunately, he can't be Superman every game, but he has games when he is Superman. And if he could come back and do that, I think that would give them a big boost. But who knows whether he'll be able to come back.
You mentioned the Flames beating Winnipeg, Sasha. They took advantage of a couple of early injuries in that series to the Jets. Mark Scheifele and Patrick Laine both lost in Game 1. Scheifele on a hit by Tkachuk that a lot of people thought was a questionable play. So is this just karma now that Tkachuk's out after getting clocked himself? And I don't imagine karma is something that odds makers put a lot of stock in when they're weighing who's going to win the game.
No, not too much. But when you play Matthew Tkachuk's style, you're certainly more likely to end up with this type of injury that he now has.
The other game we got tonight is the Islanders and the Capitals. For 3 games, the Islanders had the Capitals number, and all of a sudden Washington's come back to life like a proud former champion. It always seems like when these two teams meet in the playoffs, it never goes easy for either team. Just when you think one team's got it, the other team comes back. So is this, again, Kevin, the traditional Capitals-Islanders, we're going to go all the way to Game 7?
Well, I don't know if we're going to go to Game 7, but I would say this. I watched that game. And, I bet Barry Trotz, after he was done with that, say to his assistant coaches, we can't be complacent. He has seen that before. When Ovechkin rises up and plays at that level, the Capitals are difficult to beat. And, he looked determined. He looked like he was not going to allow his team to lose that game. And, when he's playing at his best, he's hitting, he's playing physical, he's scoring goals. And that's what he did. And if he rises up, the Capitals could stretch out this series. Now, again, history tells us that, it's chances of coming back from 3-0 to win a playoff series is, less than 3%. So I'm assuming, the Islanders are still going to win the series. But I think we could see another Capitals win here. That's the way it looked to me. And I think they planted a little nervousness in the Islanders. And when you do that, sometimes that helps you as well.
And the odds makers certainly are agreeing with you, Kevin. The Islanders are a whopping minus 910 to win this series. The Capitals are at plus 600. And there's also news here on the injury front. Capital center Nicholas Backstrom, an uncertain starter for tonight's game. You know, Ovechkin's the finisher, but the finisher needs his playmaker, and Backstrom's the best playmaker on that team, Sasha. Can they win without him?
I don't think they can win 4 straight games. Well, now 3 against this Islanders team, which is prone to playing very tight checking, very low scoring games. And, you know, I was talking about the Flyers Canadiens game being coin flips, and that's basically how I see this series as well. These are 2 evenly matched teams. They play very different styles, but at the end of the day, they're going to play very close games, and the Islanders are sort of dictating the style. It's not going to be running gun up and down. And so stringing together 4 straight wins against a team like that, with that sort of style of game, is just going to be incredibly difficult, especially when you're missing what is a top 2 center.
You know, one point I'd make a statistic, and, you know, your statistics are what they are, but one that I think is fairly significant is the fact that, you know, the Florida Panthers were also the number 6 offensive team, and we know how good Washington's offense is or can be. And the Islanders have yet to give any team 30 shots on goal, which shows the level of defense they can play when they can limit shots against really good offensive teams. I mean, I think that's an indication of how they can smother you, you know, defensively. So, I think the Islanders, all they have to do, and I'm sure Barry Trotz will be reminding them, is they got to play their game and play it effective, and they're going to win. But I think Ovechkin has other plans.
Well, I think the Islanders come out of that one eventually. I like their team a lot. As you say, Kevin, they play the style that wins in the playoffs. And the Capitals, you know, they've got that Stanley Cup that they won a couple of years ago, and they probably have, you know, enough of that not karma, but certainly that, I don't know, what's the word? They have that enthusiasm that comes with knowing what it takes. But I just think that the Islanders, to win 4 in a row against a team that's that good defensively, is going to be very difficult.
Especially when Braden Holtby is goalie.
Yeah, that is a very good point. So I don't think Braden Holtby is doing much to increase his value in the open market with this performance in this series. He's obviously been okay at times, or the Capitals won the last game, but he hasn't been the Holtby that won the Stanley Cup. He hasn't been the Holtby that has kind of carried them. And if you pay attention to social media, the fan base is really kind of sad that Ilya Samsonov was injured and was unable to be part of this trip, because it might have been a different Capitals team.
Now we've got one other series still ongoing, and I probably should turn my Hockey Writers card in for revealing this, but I went to bed last night before the end of the Canucks Blues games. The Blues were ahead, and I had visions of the 2002 first round when the Canucks had that 2-0 lead on the Red Wings and then lost 4 in a row. But lo and behold, I got up this morning and checked the scores, and Vancouver won. Now, I know, Sasha, you stuck with it because that's your hometown, so it wasn't late at night for you. So what are these Canucks doing that are, after losing 2 in a row to the team that just won the Cup, you think momentum's going the other way and Vancouver gets it right back?
Yeah, the number of things in that game that just stunned me as a sort of lifelong Vancouver Canucks fan is just endless. We were talking about this before the show, but the fact that they overcame a 2-goal deficit against the reigning Stanley Cup champions, what should be a sort of battle-hardened team. The fact that they held on to a 1-goal lead in the third period, which they are not prone to doing. The fact that Tyler Mott scored 2 goals are sort of the top 3 on the list. But basically, what this series sort of amounts to, the reason that Vancouver now has the lead, is that they're the faster team. They're using their speed, and they are creating chances off the rush. And the goaltending on St. Louis' side has not been up to par.
Yeah, are we seeing the real Jordan Binnington, Kevin, or you've seen a lot of guys?
Last name is Jake Allen.
Oh, sorry, Jake Allen. I say, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, but he was the darling of their Cup win last year, and we've seen this before where a goalie gets hot for a little while and kind of wows everybody, and vanishes almost as quickly. And should we be worried about Jordan Binnington's future, Kevin, or is this just a slump for him?
Well, I think we're going to have to give him some time before we figure that out. But, the comparison to Patrick Waugh last year, obviously, were a little bit exaggerated. There's only a couple of guys in NHL history that are like Waugh, who, came in when he was very young and won a championship before he was fully established. And then, just went on from there to establish himself as a Hall of Famer. We just don't see that very often. But, I'll say about last night's game what I've been saying now for about the last week, which is I think we're seeing that everything that we sort of know about playoff hockey is kind of changing. And, where we used to believe that experience was absolutely everything in trying to win, I sense that we are now moving toward more of if you've got an energetic, speedy team, and, we just said that odds makers don't look at karma and all that, but players do. And I think momentum and good karma and feeling good about yourself, and that carries weight now for some reason in the NHL. And that's what I see with this, Canucks team. They don't know what they don't know. They have a lot of talent. They have a lot of speed. They have a lot of energy. They just keep playing. They just keep going. They keep pushing. They don't know that they're not supposed to win this series. And I think it's made a big difference. I think the psychology of all that has really sort of lifted them. And, Bo Horvat has developed into a good leader as well, which I think also has played a role in this. So they've got so much going for them in terms of the energy that I think they're able to overcome this experience factor. Like, their attitude is, hey, what good is experience? We got talent, we got energy, we got speed, we're ready to go.
Right now, they have a better goalie, too.
Yeah, for sure. They got the better goalie. And, Jacob Markstrom, I think at the start of this year, if you asked me, well, how much do they got to worry about losing their goalie? I would have shrugged my shoulder and said, well, I'm sure they want to keep him, but, they got Thatcher, Demko, and all that thing. Now I'm saying they desperately need to keep him because they need this goalie to play with this team. And I think it would hurt this team to lose that goalie, just even in terms of the psychology. Like, they have a lot of confidence with him back there in the net, and I think you wouldn't want to disrupt the chemistry that this group has together.
Yeah, he's not immune from soft goals in the odd bad game, but he makes a lot of saves that he shouldn't.
Yeah, no, and that's right. And I think one of the big lies in NHL competition is when players saying, oh, it doesn't matter who's in net. We play the same game. No, you don't. Every team alters their game dependent upon what kind of goalie, what level of performance he's performing at. All of those things play a role in how a team plays. And I think this Canucks team with Markstrom in goal feels like it has license to kill. It feels like it can go up and play the way it needs to play. And as long as the defense is okay, that Markstrom will get the job done. And I think that helps a lot in the postseason.
He's kind of the anti-Holtby in that his value just keeps going up and up and up as the playoffs continue. Now, Vancouver you can get for minus 275 to win this series, Sasha, but you can get plus 230 on the defending Stanley Cup champions. Is that at all tempting?
Plus 230? Not terribly. Let's see. That's a 30% win probability, which is giving them sort of, I think, about 55% chance to win each of the next two games. I don't like that whatsoever. I don't want to take Vancouver at minus 270 to win the series. I'd rather just bet them on the money line in Game 6 and then possibly again in Game 7 where you're going to be getting plus money.
Now, we've got four teams that have already locked up their spot in the next round, and really I don't think any of them are terrible surprises. I mean, the Vegas Golden Knights did to Chicago what you would expect they would. You'll find the Vegas Golden Knights are the plus 325 chalk to win the Stanley Cup. They're the team that the odds makers are saying are the favorites, and I know you like the Golden Knights a lot, Kevin. What did you see from them against the Hawks?
Well, I saw what I expected to see, and the Chicago Blackhawks were playing with house money. They never expected to be in the playoffs when COVID-19 hit, and then suddenly they found themselves in. They got a little excited. They went around. They have some veteran players, but this was a team that was selling off players and preparing, for a more refurbishing of the roster, and then found itself. So I applaud them for their effort, but Vegas is too much for them. And you know why I like Vegas? I've said it before, but it bears repeating is that they have what they need in all facets of the game. They have the goaltending. Robin Leonard is playing terrifically. They have a very dependable defense that was aided by the acquisition of Martinez. And they don't have the superstar defenseman, but they got a lot of guys that know what they're doing. And they got a forward group that's very deep, but it's not a single player or a single line dependent. I don't even know whether you can actually say which line is the number one line and which is the number two. I like all of their forwards up, and I think they're kind of set up to play in this era of hockey when speed and energy matter. I think they can, pull it all together, and I did, and I still like them. I think they're, if I'm listing my top 2 or 3 contenders, they're there.
Well, the team I really like, and I've said from the start, is the Colorado Avalanche, and all 3 of us actually suspected that Arizona would fall to them, but they would give them a real tough series, and that didn't turn out to be the case. And Colorado just absolutely manhandled them in the deciding game, 7-1. Did you ever, Sasha? Are the Avalanche for real? It seems to me it kind of almost reminds me of the days of the Red Wings and Avalanche in the 90s when whoever won that series was probably going to win the cup. I think whoever wins, assuming you get a Vegas Colorado Western Conference final, I think the winner of that series is your cup winner.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Colorado Avalanche are not a good team and that they are not a Stanley Cup contender. But I do not think that you can look at these last 2 games against the Coyotes and take from that they are sort of far and away the best team in the league. Because if you watched Arizona, it's the exact opposite of what I was talking about with Montreal. There was just no fight in that team. I think that they quit. I think that they sort of realized that they were definitely the second best team on the ice. They're away from their families. They're in Edmonton. They don't have a great chance of winning the series. And I think that those last 2 games, you basically saw a team that had given up. I think if you put a fully motivated Arizona team on the ice with a fully motivated Colorado team, Colorado still ends up winning that series. But the last 2 games don't look like they did.
Well, I think it's demoralizing for the Coyotes to be up against a Colorado team with that much firepower and a superstar scorer in Nathan McKinnon, who really should be mentioned, in the same conversation with Draisaitl and Connor McDavid in terms of being the most dynamic player in the league, because he is right there. And when you're Arizona and you have to work so hard to get a goal. And you play good defense, but it sounds like a joke, but how many Coyotes do you need to score a goal? Well, it's the whole darn team. They just don't get those one-on-one goals that they really need. And there's work to be done there to refurbish that team. Tucker's done a great job of making them competitive and making them really good defensively. And Kemper is an exceptional goalie in my mind that has found a place to kind of show his wares, but they need to do a lot of work on their offense, and I think you'll see that happen in the offseason.
You talk about karma and I guess vexing your demons. The Tampa Bay Lightning certainly did that against the Columbus Blue Jackets, just knocking them off in 5 games. Well, maybe it was probably closer to 7 when you add in all the overtime. Anyway, they got getting over that hump, and that's, I don't know if it was a psychological block or anything. How much do you think psychologically that can help them, that Sasha, that they're past, the team that embarrassed them so handily last year? Now here they are in the second round, and a team, even though they're at plus 450, that seems like a pretty good price on the Lightning.
I'm sure that psychologically it was a big boost, and that they're going to head into the second round, whoever they play, with quite a bit of confidence. But it's not a team that I want to bet on to win the Stanley Cup. They're too inconsistent. There are too many lapses in concentration. And I know that they were up against a very defensively sound opponent in Columbus, but the way that their offense has looked throughout the round robin, even when they were playing Boston, Philly, and Washington, and then through against Columbus, it doesn't resemble the team that I saw in 2018, 2019 that just ran away with the President's Trophy.
I would say this: if you were had to bet a team in the East, or you felt inclined to do that, I'm not so sure that Tampa Bay wouldn't be a reasonable bet given the price they're at. Simply because they do have a lot of weapons, and they've got a tremendous goalie, and their defense is a little up and down for me. Ryan McDonagh is not at the same level that he's been at the past, but Hedman is an exceptional defenseman as well. So there's a lot to like about him. Like I'm not totally comfortable to bet on them to win it all, but if I had money to spare and I wanted to take what I considered a reasonable shot, I like this Tampa team. I think they can be scary at times, and if they can just get on a roll, and in playoff hockey, that's so important is to get that momentum and the confidence and move forward. And I could see them getting on a roll, but I also like Philadelphia, and we see what Boston refuses to go away as well.
Speaking of the Bruins, plus 800 to win the Cup, even after their dismantling of Carolina. Do you think, Kevin, is that because Rask is gone and nobody has any faith in Yaroslav Halak to take them all the way to the finals?
Well, for sure, and they didn't look great at times, and I think people are still worried about how they looked, and they shouldn't be, in those round robin games, and the top line, has been inconsistent as well. But David Krejci hasn't been inconsistent, and actually their second line has looked good when Krejci wasn't on the top line because Pasternak was injured. So. The Bruins are still the Bruins, but they don't seem quite as scary as they did, or dangerous as they did during the regular season. They haven't come into the postseason with the same level of consistency they had. They were a very consistent team in the regular season, and I don't see that in this postseason.
Yeah, if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, you're probably a little bitter that this was the year you didn't get to play the Bruins in the first round. It might have beat them, but. We all had a lot of faith in Carolina. We thought after the way they dismantled the Rangers that this might be a team ready to go on a run based certainly on what they accomplished last year. But Boston didn't seem to have a whole lot of trouble getting rid of them, Sasha. Are you at all disappointed in what you saw from the Hurricanes?
Yeah, I am. It's a team that I really like and have a soft spot for. But as I said last week, they ran into the wrong team. Boston has their number. I forget what the record is in the last. I think it would be 13 or 14 games, but Carolina's won 2 of them. And so it was a really bad matchup. And then when Svechnikov went out, that really sort of sealed the deal, I think. But I don't know if I'm backing Boston at this point either, because losing Tuukka Rask I think is huge. And there was a prop that you could have gotten sort of during the regular season. And then I think even when the NHL announced its return, which was offering the Eastern Conference champion versus the Western Conference champion. And the East was heavily favored because teams like Boston and Tampa Bay were getting a lot of love from bettors and looked like 2 of the best teams in the league. But at this point in time, I think if you have Vegas or Colorado coming out of the West, I'm pretty sure I'm taking them against whoever comes out of the East.
Well, I'm pretty sure we're out of time. We've had a quick discussion again, and time seems to fly when we start talking about hockey and betting on hockey. I want to thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back again on Tuesday with the Hockey Debates podcast powered by sportsbettingdime.com. And if you're looking for your sports betting information in the meantime, no matter what sport you want to bet on, you check it out at sportsbettingdime.com, and they'll have all the answers you need. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
Thanks.